Hello everyone, it's Isaac Wolshow, instructor ENGL 2500, written, oral, visual, and electronic composition. In this video, I want to talk to you about feedback and peer review, what you can understand about it. Now I'm on a course shell, and I'm going to go into the modules tab. You will notice in week 5 I have got activities planned for you. The first activity is going to be on feedback, which you will complete on Monday. Now this is what the activity looks like. You will watch the video, The Science of Receiving Feedback, and listen to this presentation which is being recorded about feedback and peer review. In a few sentences, you're going to describe what you've learned about feedback and how you're going to apply it when you look at your peer's paper for the rhetorical analysis essay, and even how you're going to apply it when you're revising your paper. Okay, so that's that. The second activity is on peer review. So you're going to tell me what you've learned from peer review. And this assumes that you've completed your peer review on Wednesday, and you're looking forward to the peer review on Friday. Now everybody is going to be engaged in peer review on Wednesday, so this gives you an opportunity to reflect on what you're doing. It's going to be due at I might have this due at the end of the day, just to give you time to reflect. So this is what you should expect on Wednesday. On Friday you will not have any activity because you got a lot on your plate anyway. So without further ado, let's go into our presentation. So my presentation is going to be focused on feedback, and there is a quote from Sheila Heen. She wrote the book Thanks for the Feedback, a book I've read and which has influenced me a lot. And here's a quote from her. She said, "Receiving feedback is actually a distinct and critical leadership skill. If you get better at it, you can actually learn even from the poor givers in your life." That is, givers of feedback. Now, Hien is very experienced. She teaches at Harvard University, and there is an activity which basically you're going to complete. And the activity is based on the video, The Science of Receiving Feedback, which is Hien's insight and recommendation and understanding and of how we should think about feedback and some of the problems associated with it. Now you have access to this video in our module, so I don't think there's any need for me to play the video here in this presentation. But I want to read something that she said on feedback. Feedback is essentially a relationship with the world, representing how we impact others and how the world impacts us, encompassing both spoken and unspoken signals about our behavior and actions, essentially acting as a mirror, reflecting how we are perceived by others. It's a tool to learn and grow, but can be challenging to receive because it can sometimes clash with our need to be accepted as we are. I think this is a very poignant statement to make about feedback. In a book, she talks about triggers. Some people were triggered by feedback because some feedback is too difficult for them to hear. Perhaps it reminds them of who they are, and they don't want to change who they are. Perhaps it's an insecurity issue. Perhaps it's an issue with just people not wanting to deal with certain things about their situation. So she talks about identity triggers, she talks about truth triggers. Sometimes when we're confronted with the truth, we don't want to hear it. It's an interesting book that you should read if you're interested about the science of feedback. But this video gives you a good summary of it, and what you can understand about the science of feedback. So I encourage you to watch this at your earliest convenience. Now, what about feedback, and how should we think about feedback when it comes to peer review? So there is a difference. I want to say this. There's a feedback that is a regular feedback you will get from just about anybody, and there's a feedback you get from a peer. So this is how I classify the difference. So feedback can come from anybody: your instructor, your peers, your friends, maybe your parents. Some students get their parents involved in their work, so the parents will give them the feedback. Now, peer review feedback is different because it comes from your classmates, your college friend, who is in the same year of college as you are. Another thing to know about feedback is that it can be generally on anything from the way you dress, talk, speak, write, or read. Now, peer review feedback is very specific. It's very specific to the assignment, the essay you're working on. Peer review feedback is limited to the scope of the paper and the material you have at hand. The audience is specific. You're thinking about your other classmates. You're not necessarily thinking about your instructor. It's often two-way. When you engage in peer review feedback, not only do you get feedback on your paper, but you also get feedback on their paper. So it's two-way process. Now, when you talk about feedback in the real world, sometimes it's just one way. It's one person giving you feedback and not necessarily coming back to you. The audience could be general. So that's how you can understand feedback. But I want to emphasize that in college, when you engage in feedback to a peer, you are not just calling attention to their grammar, to their mistakes, but you're seeking out ways that you can help them, seeking out ways you can also encourage them. If you're giving feedback to someone, you're thinking about put yourself in their shoes. How can you make their work better? It's not for you to just issue a general commentary on what they're doing, but you want to think about how can this help them. Yes, you want to engage in complimenting them. That's good, but that's not all about it. You should compliment, but you also should be constructive. What can help them? What change can they make? Or what change do you think they can make to make their paper better? So that's how you can think about peer review feedback. Now, not everybody is open to receiving feedback, and this leads me to my next conversation. There is a video, and I'm going to share this in the module folder. It's called let me recall the title. It's called The Pencil's Tale. The Pencil's Tale. So I've called it Lessons from a Pencil, 5 Things to Know. If you watch the video, which I'll post in the module, there's something we can learn about the pencil. So think about it this way. 5 things to know as a writer if you consider the pencil. Put yourself in someone's hands. You can't do it alone. You can't work alone. And you cannot write alone. A pencil is really not a pencil if it's not used. Who is a writer who does not write at all? 2. Embrace challenges for growth. Painful sharpening is needed to make a pencil better. Same way, not all feedback that are true are easy to swallow. You get feedback, but it's to make you a better writer. Some feedback are easy to swallow, some feedback are not easy to swallow. Okay, learn from the mistakes and track them. A pencil enables you to go back and correct your work. Like feedback, when you reflect upon feedback, when you reflect upon mistakes, reflected upon mistakes is what leads to growth and development. Okay? Another point to make is that when you think about the pencil, you think about how to leave a positive mark in the world. If a pencil is to add value to a paper, it must leave its mark on it. If your writing is going to leave a mark in the world, then be published or released for others to see and read, then it needs to be published, it needs to be developed, it needs to be refined. If you are to develop as a writer, you must continue to write and receive feedback. And the 5th one is value inner qualities. The lead in the pencil is what matters most. Similar to that, compared to your mind, the development of your mind will lead to development of your writing, not vice versa. So there's a lot for us to learn from the pencil, And let's value feedback and peer review. Feedback and peer review are not one and the same, but they complement each other. Peer review feedback is very useful because you understand the context, and you're also dealing with people who are from a similar status, education wise, similar status in when it comes to the content you're learning. So you're pretty much on it's nothing controversial, since it's not one way but a two-way process. This concludes my lesson on feedback, and I want to hope that you will go into the modules and find the activity, and you should be ready to complete this activity. What are your thoughts about the case of the pencil, the lesson, the 5 things to know? What are your thoughts on feedback, the science of receiving feedback? Feel free to share your views on the paper, on the activity that you'll be completing in your paper, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.